Today's guest is Kani. She's a TRE, tension and trauma releasing exercise trainer here in Japan and all over Asia. We talk about how we humans have become disconnected from our bodies and each other and a whole lot more, and how by reconnecting with all of that, we can release our stress, trauma, tension, and start feeling better. Let that release of energy and ideas now begin with Kani. So first of all, I'm a bit curious about your story. Basically, you've been doing humanitarian work for the past 20 years or so, something like that?
Yeah, more or less.
More or less, right? And you've been to Indonesia after some, I'm guessing, tsunamis, earthquakes there, and then came back to Japan after that big one. And you've done work in Vietnam, I'm guessing, for some post-war trauma stuff.
Yeah, Nepal after the earthquake.
Yeah, that's a more recent one.
Right.
So there seems to be sort of a clear sort of story to your life or kind of trajectory where you are trying to help a certain kind of people in a certain kind of community. And people are communities. We are these larger social organisms, and I think you've realized that. But wow, what brought you down that journey? Because a lot of people are just living their ordinary lives. We have our typical job, working in a company, selling products or whatever. And you kind of early on figured, oh, this is important to me. So what brought you down that path?
I was a very ordinary Japanese student, young girl.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, I had one teacher who just came back from Africa doing some volunteer work like JICA, Yeah. And then I realized this is like, this kind of thing is possible in my life because, it's always good to know someone in real in your life who's done this kind of thing. And I was always fascinated to go abroad and do something. But what I feel really fascinated was like working in the developing countries. And so the first trip I went was Africa when I was 18. Even before my high school graduation, I basically dumped my graduation and I just went to Africa via India. And I did a 3 months volunteer work there in the school for the deaf. So that was the beginning of my journey. And then I was very clear I wanted to work in that part of the world and then wanted to do some humanitarian work. I just knew that's what I wanted to do. Going to university in Japan and then getting a job in a company never fascinated me at all, really. So, and at the time, there was nothing like a development studies as such, humanitarian work, as a subject in Japanese university. So I went to London. And there is a university called School of Oriental and African Studies. So that was the college that's specializing in underdeveloped world kind of thing. So that's how I started to study about it, and then ended up getting a job in a humanitarian organization and working in Asia. I went to study African studies, but somehow my life kind of turned around and I started to focusing on Southeast Asia. So I studied Thai and I studied Indonesian language. And then I lived in Indonesia for 6-7 years, I think, beginning from the earthquake in Yogyakarta, 2006, and so on and so forth. So that's how my career started as a humanitarian worker. And I always witness, people with trauma. I mean, it's a mass disaster. I was in tsunami, I was in earthquake, volcanic eruption, post-conflict, that kind of area. And I've seen people being traumatized. And I keep going back to this area. And, after 10 years, the city is completely restored, the building is clean, road is set. But then when I get into talking to people, the community, they are traumatized. There was nothing's been done about it. There is more domestic violence. There is more suicide. There is more problems among people. So I always noticed that, humanitarian work, the international aid should do more for that kind of soft aid, which is a trauma care, community building as such. I come from grassroots kind of approach, not from IMF or World Bank kind of stuff. So I really always interested in community-based approach. But international donor doesn't want to pay for this kind of stuff because it's not quantifiable. It's much easier to say, okay, we build the 2,000 schools and then 20,000 tents, and those quantifiable items is much easier to report to donors. So there is very little money spent on the soft side of recovery from the disaster, which is trauma. It's not quantifiable. It's very hard to assess the result, right? So when I came back to Japan 2011, after the Great Eastern Earthquake, that was like 16 years after I left Japan. And I came back because it was my country and then I wanted to do something about it. So I went to Iwate, the Tohoku prefecture, and then I started working the reconstruction project there. Then I met Dr. Verselli, who's the founder of TRE. And then when I read his book and heard his word, I realized that this is like my missing piece from my career, the trauma care, which is very community-based. It's not pathological oriented. It's not clinical, so that's how I met TRE.
Yeah. And I think another reason why maybe people aren't going down this solving the trauma stuff, they're going to these quantifiable measures like building cities and, getting numbers up and down and all of that. It's also just that there's a lack of understanding of how the body works, what it even means to be human, how the brain and the body connect, and how that connects to like a larger community of other people and other animals and the larger universe. Like we haven't really sat down, or we haven't been taught in schools at least, and really it's only starting to come to light through work through like Stephen Porges and Dr. Berselli and all of these guys. What the heck are we? What is it to be human? What is the nervous system? So can you, before we later on in our conversation today, we'll get into sort of practical solutions of how to release ourselves from our trauma, or how to avoid getting traumatized, how to become less fragile and all of that. But first of all, we have to understand, what the heck are we? So that's a big question, but we have a very narrow kind of idea about what it is to be human. It's usually up here in the neocortex, or at the very least, it ends at our own body. And that's what I am. But what are we?
What are we? First, we are animals. Second, we are mammals, right? So from our body perspective, our nervous system, our physiology works exactly like that, animal and specifically mammals, right? And then on top of that, like you said, there is this big neocortex, thinking brain. And this is connected to higher consciousness. So what makes us different from other animals? And I don't want to represent the voice of other higher mammals, right? Because they might be more intelligent than us in real. Yeah. But I think as a human, what makes us different from other animals, other mammals, are having this higher consciousness. And it can create our own reality. We are not just living according to our physiology only. We can work both sides, from neocortex down to the body and body upwards, right? So that's how I define humans. Sometimes when we do shaking, when we do this TRE exercise, I said, well, this is for all animals, all mammals, but by the way, we are not polar bears, we are humans, right? I make this kind of joke because humans are the only way that we can work from top down. Yeah, right. We can use our consciousness, try to connect with our body, and we can communicate with our nervous system. I think animals only does it from body, right? Just reactive. Yeah, just very instinctual, right? But we can work both ways together. So that's how I define humans.
Right. So first of all, the brain is obviously connected to the body. It's one thing. We don't really need to distinguish it, but it's all kind of connected through the brainstem and through those lower brain structures, through the vagus nerve. and all of that. So it is sort of this two-way street, but especially for humans. And for humans, our neocortex is so big and powerful that sometimes it can override the natural body instincts. But the body is still there, and the body is really running the show. There are these metaphors that some people use, like we are the rider on the elephant, or the rider on the horse, and there's this rational thinking, logical language based brain that's up here, and then we have these more animal parts. They call it the limbic system or something. But what you're saying is it's not just the limbic system; it's the entire body, and the body, in a way, is the way it works, the way it reacts to things is kind of simple. It's sort of this just pure kind of thing. Oh, this happens. You got this stress. This is how you react. You release it. This happens. You run away or you fight. There's different ways to. It's a very simple kind of pure kind of way of living. But humans, with our neocortex, it's very complex, and it's full of all these psychological concepts and these beliefs and these values and all these weird memories and stories. And while the body does sort of run the show, I believe, our brains are so powerful that we can at least temporarily kind of override it.
Yes. So override is one thing, like suppressing it.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the biggest part of our brain activity. But I also believe there's another level of higher consciousness which try to make sense what's happening in our body, what's happening in our life. Like when we try to understand why this thing happened to me, like a traumatic event. Yeah, like I've been to biggest disaster, on the planet, and it's like completely absurd. Like you just cannot comprehend why this is happening, right?
Yeah.
And then it's somehow like people need to understand to try to figure out the meaning of why trauma happened to them. And of course, the first layer is really working with this fight or flight response, the survival mode. It's all this animalistic response of the body. And then eventually, the higher part of the brain and lower part of the brain start coordinating and start integrating that experience. And then coming out of the tunnel of this traumatic event, and then have the new meaning, new implication or new understanding of the meaning of that event. For me, that is very human specific activity. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first, yes, there is this animalistic response, physiological. It's super powerful. Whole body is coordinate for you to survive. And it's very difficult for neocortex to suppress that. That's where the trauma reaction's happening, right?
Yeah.
And then we learn how to calm down that nervous system, and the body start to understand that there is no more danger, that you're actually safe. Right?
Yeah.
And then from then onwards, this neocortex, this higher consciousness start filtering in and then start integrating all of this. I think this is a very beautiful part of trauma therapy. I don't like to call it therapy as such, because we all go through traumatic experience one time or the other,
Yeah.
But how we gonna experience and then go through and then come out of it. And that's how I see the trauma process. Yeah. Am I talking along the way you want to talk?
No. I don't know. Like, there's a bunch of things we can talk about. So let's just talk. Let's step back a bit first, though. How are mammals different from other animals? Like, what makes mammals so special or different than, say, a reptile or a fish? And what do they have in common, too? Because that's going to help us understand
Right.
what we are, because we evolved from these creatures, right?
Right. So the first of all, compared to fish or lizard, this a reptile or other kind, birds also, they come out of the mother, eggs, in form of eggs, whatever. They immediately start becoming independent, right? They don't need to create a bonding with a caretaker. On the other hand, mammals, like any babies, animals, they come out of the mother's body and then immediately they are super vulnerable. They cannot survive by themselves. They need to be looked after, for a certain period of time, right? So that requires different nervous system because they have to be able to create some kind of bonding from mother and child in order to survive. So mammal have a very special nervous system called the ventral vagal nervous system, and this is create mammals as a mammals. We live with a caretaker for a long time. We live in a tribal community. A lot of mammals are, some of them when they become mature and they leave the tribe. But otherwise they learn how to live in the group of the same species. If we are like lizard, we only know how to react to the threat as a runaway or attack. We cannot live in a tribe. We cannot live in the community, right? So we needed to develop another level of nervous system to work out the conflict, work out the threatening situation without attacking or without running away.
Right.
So we have this special nervous system to use our body language, tone of voice, facial expression, all of these body language to communicate with one another, to say, hey, I'm safe, I'm not threatening you.
Yeah.
Right? So when you listen to the voice of dogs or cats or monkeys or whatever, they talk to each other with a certain level of tone.
Yeah.
When they are angry, we know they are angry. When they are happy, we know they are happy. That's because their voice changes. And those things are governed by the nervous system called the ventral vagal. And this is very specific to humans. To mammals.
Yeah, and humans too, but humans are mammals.
And humans, of course.
So yeah, we are just these mammals, and with a little bit extra on top. But yeah, so reptiles and all these other pre-mammal animals, they do have. We do share a lot of parts of our nervous system with them. We do still have sort of these lower parts of the vagus nerve, and I'm probably using the wrong words.
It's a fight or flight, yes.
For example, they have the sympathetic nervous system where they respond to danger or threat with either fight or flight, or they just get down into that dorsal vagal freeze or shut down. They just play dead like a mouse in a cat's mouth or something like that. But then because humans, we have to sort of be social and cooperate to survive, we have to be able to communicate with one another. And humans are also dangerous. They can be dangerous. So we have to sort of develop these cues of safety to each other through. And I think I was listening to Stephen Porges talk about it, I think, and he was saying how when mammals split from reptiles, the mid bone in the ear kind of split off, and that allowed us to sort of hear different tones.
Yeah.
And certain tones, like ones like high-pitched sounds, will kind of draw us in. We don't want to hear the shrieking baby, but it'll draw us in. And sort of lower tones, like the sound of a lion roaring or a dinosaur or something, or loud noises or different things like that, that's going to be kind of danger cue. So we have different ways to demonstrate through our vocalizations, through our facial movements, through the sounds of our voice, through our just basic, like what we call body language. Those are ways for us to sort of represent safety to one another. And we have to socialize basically in order to feel safe as a human, and in order for us to survive and stuff. So we have this sort of extra part up here in our nervous system that requires us to be social. Like we're basically, neurologically, we are social creatures. And if we get rid of that part, if we don't have the community, or if we just don't feel safe like around each other because people are they have a monotone voice, or they're talking in some scary way, or they're not making eye contact, or there's no touch, there's none of these human things or these mammalian things, and our nervous system senses that. And I think, like you said, all mammals have vocalizations. They don't necessarily have like words and language, but they have frequencies and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
so we humans, we think that our words are what matters most, but deep down, it's like that pre-linguistic animal is like, I don't
exactly.
believe you. I feel danger. I feel safety, and that sort of that gut reaction of safety and danger. That sort of really kind of paints our entire perception and controls our behavior and changes everything for us. Is it kind of like that?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's where the neocortex overriding happens, like you said earlier. For example, your body's saying, no, I don't like this person. I don't really feel safe. But he's my boss. So I have to be nice and I have to comply to what he's saying. And then that's where the neocortex start overriding your response, right? And then when that thing happen again and again and again, your nervous system eventually give up and okay, just shut down, just do this, disconnect from this body, body's instinctual knowing, just go along with the head, what the head say. And that's where the problems start. That's when the body start feeling really stressed.
You've been doing work with traumatized individuals and communities in different places. Have you noticed how people in one culture or one economy, one country or area tend to react differently to surprising events in life? Because trauma itself isn't like an event. You have an event, it's like startling. For example, even in the animal world, the classic one is that the deer is running away from the lion, and afterwards he escapes, or he shuts down, or he's not going to fight him. We get these sort of surprising events in our lives too, like it could be a natural disaster like an earthquake or a tsunami or some war or something smaller than that. Um, do some cultures, you believe, get traumatized, react more sensitively to such events, and some are maybe more resilient? Have you noticed anything like that?
Yes. And I have to be very careful saying this because this is
Oh
my
no.
own perspective, right? It's
Yeah, I
not
know. Yeah.
it's not clinically tested or anything, right? But from my experience, I worked in the United States, I worked in Canada, I worked in Europe, and I worked in different developing countries in Asia. And I've been to really different traumatized situations. And what I felt, this is my gut sense, is really that people in developing countries, they are much more resilient to trauma or stress than people in developed nation, including Japan. And I really wonder why that was. And my feeling is that in developing countries, whether you like it or not, you are so much into this community setting, except the big city and slum. Yeah. In majority of the rural areas, their community is so tight. And a lot of the time it's very annoying because people are always gossiping about each other and, you cannot escape from other people, always like on top
Yeah.
of each other. And a lot of people complain about it. However, that is how the mammal is as an essence. We live in a community and we are brought up by the entire community rather than one mother or one father, right? So in developing countries in a rural area, the mother is busy, father's busy, there's always grandmother, there's a grandfather, there is a siblings, and there is a cousins, there is an uncle, the entire
Yeah.
community is always looking after them somehow. They
Right.
never left alone. I don't know your generation, but in my generation, it was kind of create independence for the babies. The babies are left alone, sleep in a cot by themselves, and you're
Yeah.
not supposed to pick up the baby that's create dependency or something. And
Yeah.
then newborn babies are left alone, crying until they are tired. Yeah, I think in
Right.
70s and 80s, this kind of childbearing was quite popular in the West. But now I understand that the polyvagal theory, I think it was almost abusive to those children because they need the bonding. They need to know what safety is. When the baby was so small, up to 2 years old, when they are developing the nervous system to understand what is safety in this world, they are left alone, crying. Yeah, until they give up, until they completely feel helpless. Right? It will never happen in developing country context, I think, in a rural area, especially because there are always somebody looking. Children, right? They don't have a food, they don't have a clothes, maybe, they don't have money, but there's always somebody there for the kids. Okay. So I understand these two different cultures. And I think the reason why the people in developed countries kind of develop this very resilient, strong nervous system is because of that very early childhood. They have a very strong connection with another human being in a very safe and grounded setting. Mother is busy, father busy, there is a shortage of food and this, that, the other. It exists much more than developed nation. But somehow, for this little human just came out of this world, they just need to feel another nervous system, grounded nervous system to be with them. That's how they learn what is the sense of safety, the somatic sense, what is it like. And then how to go back to safety. When there's something terrible happen, they cry, somebody's always there to soothe them, make them feel safe again. So this repetition of the upset and then back to safety, upset and back to safety, this repetition basically develop their ventral vagal nervous system. They understand, they trust the connection with another human being. That's the only thing I can imagine why the people in developing countries are so resilient. Does it make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. Because I don't know, maybe in the medical world or the social world, wherever, we forget that we come out of the womb only partially developed, right? We start developing our nervous system. Well, we know this. We see the body getting bigger and bigger, and we see the kids, developing. But like, we are so incomplete in the very beginning, and we start learning and we start growing our nervous system over the first 10 years of our life or whatever, and through our teenage years as well. And a necessary part of that development is to connect with other nervous systems outside of ourselves, to know that we are safe, that we are in a group. And because of this idea in the West, and which spread to Japan too, that independence is like, you can somehow be independent from day one. And then some people never really got that connection. Like when I was a kid, it was like you're saying, one is because I grew up in a big family, so it's just like a resource problem. You can't like take care of every kid. They have to be independent essentially. But it's also this ideal of like, you should do it yourself. And so there was no hugging. There was no like, say I love you, or none of this like sort of emotional kind of connection. It was just sort of like, hey, you're an adult, I'm an adult, and things like that. And I mean, but that's normal. That's a sort of normal parenting style, like you said, in the decade. So it's not something special to me or something.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when that happens, I can still feel. I feel a little bit. It's not just in your families, in your wider culture. You feel a little bit like you don't trust people as much. You feel a little bit like I want to be alone. I want to do it myself. But also you're a little bit like tensed up or something. You're in sort of this fight flight mode, and sort of gets trapped in there. But if you go to like, even you're going through in Japan, you see, because part of being traumatized, you can sort of see it in people's bodies too. And this is sort of a maybe controversial thing to say, but just walk around and look at people in, say, Vietnam or in some of these Southeast Asian countries. The way they move their face, the way they talk, everything is completely different from, say, in Japan. In Japan, it's like, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but it's very kind of monotone, flat tone, not a lot of emotional expression, not a lot of movement in the face. It looks to me like some kind of shutdown response, some kind of freeze response sort of permeated throughout the entire culture. But whatever, maybe you can give your own diagnosis there. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe there is this sort of, because our nervous system is connected to our overall environment, it all kind of spreads, right? If one person's nervous system is this way, then that kind of spreads to the child, and the child spreads to the teacher, and it's all one big network, right? So how, this is a dangerous question, and it's a difficult question, but how would you sort of, knowing all this, everything you know about polyvagal theory, would you say that in general, Japan is a bit more traumatized than, say, people in Southeast Asia? And if so, like what?
Uh,
I might just cut this whole part
yeah.
out. What sort of, where are they stuck? It feels like people are kind of stuck somewhere. Maybe it's in fight flight. I don't think it's fight flight. I feel like it's something lower, maybe in the sort of dorsal vagal shutdown freeze response. But it's, like I said, it's a sort of dangerous question, dangerous territory to go down. But what's your sort of thoughts on that? I'm kind of very curious about this.
Again, this is my own observation. Why the Japanese people don't show the emotion, it's nothing new, right? This is very cultural
Yeah.
because one is Confucian, one is Buddhism, one is Bushido. So showing emotion is not a good thing, right? So this is a lot more culturally grained, conditioned behavior rather than nervous system response traditionally.
Okay.
But let's say last, I don't know, 30, 40 years, like from the end of bubble economy onward, 30 lost years, I think we started to develop much more deeper, more chronic stress traumatized society. The suicide rate is one of the highest in the world. All of these things it shows, right? Because during the bubble economy, end of the war up to mid 80s, this is all about work, right? Earn money, becoming stronger, bigger, best, all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And then the father working all the time, mothers at home by themselves with the kids. From there, something started going wrong, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people live in the city, again, disconnected from the bigger community, disconnected from the bigger family, nuclear family started. So from my generation, really, it's really like where they started to act exactly in the same path that the Europe or America was going through, more individualistic, then I would say, yes, they really start to developing more chronic stress society. And we are all going through that, the school system, teachers, all. But I wouldn't say Japan is more traumatized than other countries in Asia, for example, because look at each country. I was in Thailand, Nepal, I worked for Pakistan,
Yeah.
Indonesia, East Timor, things
Yeah.
are happening in those countries in the last 50 years. It's just phenomenal. Like, I cannot comprehend how they survive these traumas,
Yeah.
right? So that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the individual resilience level is higher in those countries, I would say. Because in Japan, it's sort of lukewarm water, I just went out of Japan after Corona finished, last couple of years. I started to travel again after 3 years and then started asking questions like what happened during pandemic. Japan was one of the best country to be in at the time.
Oh,
There is
yeah.
no strict lockdown. Yeah, the government giving all this compensation to people. There was no forced vaccination. We were kind of very nice compared to most of the world, right?
Yeah.
And yet, we are the one that keep having vaccines and putting masks on until now, right?
Yeah.
So this is the kind of thing I found very strange. That some countries, some people are really pushed to their limit
Yeah.
by those policies, and their survival instinct was very activated unless we stand up and then raise our voice and say no to the government and then people stop this all, we're going to be killed I mean, that is the very instinctual fear happened. So that now in Europe, there's a lot of demonstration, a lot of voices. I don't like this. But in Japan, everything was lukewarm, and then everyone is kind of satisfied. You know,
Yeah.
we are very privileged in that way. But that's taking our power away to really say what we want, what we don't want. We are always looking at each other's faces. Oh, what are they going to think of me if I say this? Oh, well, am I going to be judged if I do this? We are living in this constant self-monitoring, and self-oppression. No one is forcing us to do anything here compared to many, many different countries who are dictatorship or whatever, poverty driven. Here, we are very free. But this is our conditioning, our education, our history, the conditioning that we need to self-center. Always worry about what other people think. And that is creating so much stress, so much, you said docile vagal response, shut down response.
Yeah.
If you go to some country, they get angry, they fight, they scream, they shout. This is their fight or flight response. But some way they are releasing that energy
Yeah.
of their stress. But in Japan,
And we have to release it, right?
we have to release it one way or
like look at every animal. You look at the animal after escaping an attack, it'll shake it off and it'll trim her and stuff.
they run.
Or in maybe children, David Berchelli's talking about when he was in some like in the bomb shelter, right? And the younger children would be crying and shaking, and when you go up on stage, you sort of feel yourself shaking because you're scared for public speaking, and we naturally just cry and shake and flip around and freak out when we're kids. But then, like he was saying, in that bomb shelter, once they got older, once they're 10, they're still kind of shaking. There are maybe a couple kids crying, but they're starting to restrain themselves, control their emotions, control any kind of release. And then when you get to the adults or even the teenagers, they're just these stoic, like the Japanese now, just kind of, I can handle it. I'm okay. I have no weakness. And so we can't, it's like culturally, it's not just Japan. We are told not to release anything. Even in Japan too, like when you sigh, you just, like that feels good. That's a nice natural release. You always feel better after you sigh, aside from because something good happened or something bad happened, or crying usually makes you feel better. Shaking, dancing, screaming. I was living in Korea before. It would not be that uncommon to see some person walking down the street just screaming at the top of her lungs and You never see that. You don't see some grandmother sort of whacking her child like, you're a bad boy. Well, we shouldn't be hitting each other. We do need to express ourselves, and we need more movement. We need more flow through our bodies.
Totally.
And I think it's just a global thing where we're not releasing ourselves in these simple ways. And going back to the whole mammal thing, every mammal naturally just does this, but because of our beliefs, our values about what people should be doing, we try to control our body and overpower our body, and we restrain these very natural things, and that kind of builds up over time, over generations and over, history and over our own lives. So, I don't know. What should we do? What's the first step? Should we just escape to another place, or should we start teaching people, or just healing ourselves? What do we do?
Well, first of all, I always say allow yourself to feel.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel. And it's okay. Life is shit. We all think you're looking at social media and everyone putting fantastic posts, and everyone's life seems to be like fabulous, and mine isn't. Mine is terrible. Mine is miserable. That comparison is already something fake about it, right? Everyone's life at the good time and bad time. It's all colors of rainbow. It's okay to have a bad time. It's okay to feel bad. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to hate somebody. It's all this negative shadow emotion that we think this is bad. I shouldn't be feeling this, and then put it away and oppress it. You think you're free from that, but it's in your body, and it pops out in the most undesirable time when it shouldn't do, right? So first of all, just welcome everything, right? All shade of emotions. And this is very important. If you're very traumatized, your body cannot handle feeling that, right?
It's too dangerous, right?
Yeah, it's dangerous because this, like mindfulness meditation, it's all about observing. And it is, yes, true. But for certain people, this observing is experience of hell, experience of re-traumatization, right? So this is a line I would say, welcome all the emotion and feel. And for some people, you are disconnected from the certain type of emotion because you cannot handle it, right? So what I'm saying is welcome all the emotions that you are comfortably hold. You can comfortably feel and observe. That's the first thing. Your mind should not judge, yes, this is bad, this is good. But if your body cannot handle that emotion, don't chase it, don't dig it. And then that's where you might need somebody else to help you to process that part. So I love meditation. I actually teach meditation and I do all sorts of meditation as well. But there is also the small number of people among that group. Sometimes it's very difficult to go through that process of observation or interceptions. These people are more traumatized and then somatically wounded in a way. They need extra intervention to be able to process it. But otherwise, majority of population, with just the culturally conditioned to oppress, get rid of it. Welcome. If you don't like it, notice you don't like it. You don't like somebody, notice you don't like somebody, that person. Ask yourself, who does this person reminds me of?
Yeah.
Where is this person coming from? What I don't like about this person? Who in the past making me remember about this person, this behavior, this tone of voice, this situation? It's always connected to something in the past.
The past is always controlling us, right? The past from our childhood, from our
Yeah,
teenage years, that's like always there. And we think, I don't like this person, or I hate my job, or I don't want to do this, or I like this, I don't like this. It's all kind of painted by these things we forgot about, right?
exactly. It's very history connected, history conditioned, right?
Yeah.
So just to observe, because there is always a reason why you don't like something or somebody or some places. What you don't like about that?
So basically, trauma is like we kind of store, like when we have a uh, overstimulating event, something scary or something dangerous happening, our our body has a physiological response, right? Like adrenaline and cortisol starts pumping out. We get ready to fight or flight, and that's like a lot of electricity, a lot of energy. And with trauma, I guess, is sort of that gets stored in the body. We don't actually release it. Do we have to physically release the trauma? Is there a way to release ourselves from our past without physically moving?
Um, TR is tension and trauma releasing exercise. So people always say releasing trauma. But from my experience of teaching this method, for me, it's more like a trauma integrating method, integrating trauma rather than releasing. Releasing, what we were releasing is the energy that which was locked up in our body. We are releasing the energy, which is frozen energy, right? When we say we are traumatized, which means when those events happen, you couldn't run away, you couldn't fight, you are completely helpless in that situation. So what you could do the best was frozen yourself,
Oh, yeah.
and that is the best way to survive at the time.
But you wanted to run away. You wanted to fight. You wanted to move, but you couldn't move.
Yes, but you couldn't.
But
So
that
that
energy is still there in your
energy,
body.
exactly, your nervous system still remember an incomplete event. That is somatically, that is trauma. So when we are releasing that, it's not releasing the memory of events
No.
or anything. We are releasing that frozen energy. When the frozen energy is out of your system, your brain automatically assume, okay, the event is over. It's completed. I survived here now.
Right.
right? Unless that completion happen, your brain, your amygdala, it's an alarm.
Yeah.
It's keep ringing with every single trigger. It's keep ringing because danger is still here. You need to run. You need to do something, and that's activate your nervous system again and again. That is traumatic response.
Because we're basically stuck in a stressed out state, does that mean like, oh, we're just literally going to be flooded with more cortisol and we're going to speak faster and we're going to have shallower breaths and we're going to have all these sort of stressed out kind of behaviors in our everyday life just running in the background as a default state? Is that
Yes,
going to happen? Oh my God,
exactly. Yeah.
that's sad.
It's
It's
like,
sad.
you have the fire alarm in the kitchen, and we
Yeah.
need that fire alarm just in case there is a real fire, right?
Yeah.
But if the fire alarm sensitivity is really high and every time you cook, it starts alarming, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
It's like that in our brain. So you had some very traumatic experience, I don't know how many years ago, and you couldn't run, you couldn't fight, you could only be frozen in order to survive at the time. That energy, cortisol, adrenaline was produced at the time, but there was no way to discharge at the time.
Yeah.
That is still there.
So that fire alarm is going off for a reason. There is smoke in that room, but it's like old smoke from like 20 years ago, and it's all built up.
Any smoke.
Any smoke.
Exactly.
And what we're doing also these days is so easy is we can just, get up there and break the fire alarm. We don't get rid of the smoke. We just turn it off or we break it by drinking alcohol or playing on our phone or taking some kind of pharmaceuticals. There's so many ways to cover it up, and that's also another danger. What role do like things like, I don't know, drugs and alcohol and technology and food and this is a huge category, but basically distractions and ways to avoid or basically break that fire alarm. How is that affecting things? Does it help at all, or is it just making things worse?
Well, that is dangerous, right? Because
Yeah.
all sorts of addiction is basically numbing our feelings so you don't have to feel, right? Which means just to break the fire alarm. But what if there is a real danger, right?
Yeah.
And you cannot respond, so you're completely immobile, like. Right? So if you're like in abusive relationship and all that, and then it happened again and again, and you already destroyed your fire alarm, meaning that when you meet someone who is not so good for you, actually your neuroception, your body is telling you this person is not safe. You already shut down that alarm, so you don't feel anything. So you're just going to follow the pattern.
So you get taken advantage of, you get like violently attacked or raped or things happen, right? And that seems to be other big things happening in Japan. There's like underneath, there's all everywhere in the world. There's this undercurrent of violent crimes going on, and people are just frozen, and so they become victims. But also, they're frozen, so they can't say anything about it. They can't express it. They're just like,
Yes.
and because no one's doing anything about it, we're just stuck in this. Because some humans are stuck in sort of this fight response. They're fighters, and that's sort of their home. That's their default. Of course, our real home is like up here in this sort of safe, open, connected social space. The ventral vagal stuff we're talking about, but we kind of get stuck in like, some people are, oh, this guy's in fight mode. This person's in flight mode. This person's just in shutdown. It could be a whole culture, but on an individual level, that's what we really see. And when you put like someone who's in shutdown, who's just frozen, and combine them with someone who's fighting, oh, that's scary. But when we have these social, safe, connected people who's they're basically releasing their tension, their stress, the energy on a more regular basis, they are also kind of like these healers. It's like they're the anti criminal or something. They're like saving us. So if we can find a way to bring ourselves up to this more connected, safe space by, how do we do that exactly? Because we have to, in order to help each other, we have to help ourselves first. But how do we? There's TRE, and you can get into that. But what are some other ways for us to just calm down, basically, and release that energy besides singing? And there's a bunch of things, but yeah.
I think exercise is very important. Moving our body, moving our energy. I mean, that's help us also from different kind of disease. right? When we are in a high stress level, we have this constantly discharging hormone, like stress hormones, and that's really damaging our adrenal gland. Yeah. So we are constantly in this fatigue, lower energy level, all sorts of chronic pains, right? Obese. This is all because of the stress hormones, right? So first of all, okay, we need to solve this psychological problem, and then go to therapist, and then you read so many different seminars, and you do all sorts of mental activity. But hey, first, body, breathe. Notice when you're not breathing. Breathe, right?
How should we breathe? How can we breathe to get better? What's the way to breathe?
Notice that when you're not breathing, when your chest is up, and feel your feet, move your toes, started to feel the little bit of energy is moving. I mean, some heavily traumatized people, severely traumatized people, even this is too much for them to feel. And I'm not saying this is the method for everybody. Of course, just ask them to breathe deep and they start feeling nausea. There are some people like that. And don't judge yourself for that, but you might need extra help from somebody else who are expert. But generally speaking, notice where the tension is, touch, pay attention.
Yeah.
Your hand connected to your shoulder, for example. Just breathe through it. Then your nervous system start connecting to the body. And if really there is no danger around your environment, you'll eventually start calming down. That's the first step. You don't need medicine. You don't need an expert.
Yeah.
Just first breath and feeling in your legs and noticing the tension and connect with your body. That's it. First level.
A lot of us are not paying much attention to our body. We're kind of almost like trying to ignore it. So I guess step one, it sounds like, is just recognize this body this is you. This is a story. It's all here. Everything's here. So listen to the body and don't hide and run away from it. Listen as much as you can. Just let the body do its thing and trust the body, basically. Build a more trusting relationship with your own body and don't judge it so much. Don't try to stop it and say, bad body, or stupid body, or you're weak or whatever. Just like let it like shake or let it cry or let it move. And that's another point. Number two is like, it sounds like, because it's all about feeling connected. When we feel connected to anything, even just my hand is connected to my shoulder, the air is connected to my mouth, or the different body parts are flowing together and everything's moving, or you feel connected with each other, you feel connected to nature. It's just like this feeling of anytime you can really connect with anything and feel that merging together.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah,
sounds like that kind of works. You just start anywhere, just connect with something.
exactly. The best way for the nervous system to calm down is they realize you're safe,
You're not alone.
right? And then the sense of safety is coming from connection. Sometimes you're alone, but you're walking in the nature, and then you suddenly feel very calm and then very relaxed, meaning you're safe. Because if you're not safe, you're not relaxed. If you're relaxed, you feel you're safe, right? And that's because your nervous system start connecting with other beings in the environment and knowing that you're safe, right? In the same way, if you don't feel safe with being with other people, don't force yourself to be with other humans, because your neuroception saying that these people are not safe for you. So you cannot force it. You cannot fake your nervous system. You just notice what your body is feeling and respect that. Go to the nature, go to the animal, connect with your pet. Yeah, whatever that makes your body feel, okay, this is a starting point.
And just allow ourselves to do that, to not judge it and just do it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to do some of the TRE, the trauma release exercises myself. I just watched YouTube videos and read books and stuff. But something interesting happens. It's very, very interesting, because you normally think that you're in control, that everything you are is up here and you're thinking brain with all these words, but then when you let your body just move in the way like you stop like trying to stop it, you just let it go. And with these TRE exercises, it's like there's different ways to do it, but basically you're letting your body shake. You're putting your body in these sort of kind of different positions. Like there's this butterfly kind of one where you lay on your back and you have your legs up, kind of spread but connected together. Like if you hold it there long enough, you kind of start shaking. But what's interesting when I started doing it is like at first you're kind of shaking a little bit and kind of like little here, a little to the side. But then I did it the second time, and what happened was my legs started naturally going in this like sprinting kind of motion. I was running, 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 running. I wasn't moving my legs. I was just laying there, and like my body was running itself. My body was running me. And it was just like I was just run. It was like literally just running movement. And it would get faster and faster and faster and faster. The more I let go and just let my body do it, I was running faster and faster. I'm thinking, whoa, what does that tell me? I don't even know the story behind that, but like, clearly I wanted to run from something in the past, it sounds like, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
finally running.
Right.
So do different people like respond to these exercises differently? Like some people run and some people like start punching. Like I'm not punching ever. I don't ever feel like punching. I don't, maybe I secretly will. Maybe I'll get to that day where I start punching things. But um is there a sort of trend you notice, like from this kind of person or this culture or just in general? Like, what are the different ways that people release it? Like, I'm running, for example. That's one way. I'm like sprinting. Is that the standard one, or are there? What are the different variations on this, and what does it mean?
Everyone shake completely different.
Anyway, anything.
From day 1 and 2 and 3, their shaking change. And it's
Yeah.
supposed to develop, supposed to change, right?
Okay.
So if it's a first session, second session, from my experience, most prominent ones start appearing. And then after a while, that energy is discharged, and that story doesn't matter what story, because we're not going to dig into the story itself is completed.
Yeah.
Then your body start releasing something else, and then that's completed and something else. So there is a layers of the somatic memories connected to certain event, big or small, and they will just start appearing one after another. It's like peeling a skin of onions. So some people just like shake so little for a while until
Yeah.
they realize this exercise is actually good for them. And then body suddenly say, okay, now I'm ready to release. Then boom, there's a big shake that kind of happening, right?
Yeah, you just let it go. It's like erupting. Like, whoa! And that's magical, because
Yes.
then that's when you really realize the power of, oh my God, what the heck am I? And that's why I asked you that question earlier. Like, what is a human? Because when you start shaking and your body's doing these things all by itself, this is a clear, like, okay, there's much more going on than I thought. And like, whoa, this is wild. This is magical. And it's
Yeah.
also kind of very freeing. You feel so good afterwards. It releases you from all this pressure of, I have to be this way and I have to think this way and I have to be this and be that. You're like, dude, you just are. You are an animal and you can relax. Just let yourself be. And that's like so, you feel so good afterwards.
Right. Yeah, physically great. And also hormonal balance in your body, your autonomic nervous system, it start regulating itself much more healthy way. Right. So all
You
these,
feel safer afterwards. You actually feel safer. You can sleep better. One thing I started doing, I've only been doing this for the past few days, really, because it's kind of scary to do. You don't want, it's weird, but you start doing it, and like before you go to sleep, because like throughout the day, like you have all kinds of stresses. I think every day,
mm-hmm.
any animal, any mammal, every human, especially in this modern world, you're gonna have this sort of built up energy. And by the time it's nighttime, you're definitely gonna have something. Even if you're not traumatized, you were
Yes.
awake, you were walking through the world, and maybe you're drinking caffeine or you're eating this food or whatever, little things, just noises. And for me, like when I started doing that, even if I'm hyper caffeinated and like you think you can't fall asleep, doing that will like it'll put you to sleep like a baby. Did
And
you notice anything like that yourself, or is there some sort of connection between sleep and TRE exercises?
of course, the TRE exercise, typically speaking, it bring your nervous system from sympathetic to parasympathetic, right? So you can sleep well.
Yeah.
For some people, they prefer to do it in the morning because the exercise is really energizing them. It's relaxed but energizing way.
Yeah.
So they prefer to do it in the morning before the work and then feel really fresh and they start the day. So it's depending on the people, when and how long and how often they use TRE.
And we might not know the story or the actual conscious memory, the experience of what, for example, what exactly was I running from? I was probably running from a lot of different things, but it could be like you're running from this dog, or maybe you're trying to run away from your home because you hated being there. You're running away from your teacher, or maybe you just totally forgot. But there's like this kid running at you with a knife or something. You don't even know. But does releasing this trauma, does that ever sort of resurface the memory, or does it completely delete the memory? How does the body experience of releasing the tension, releasing the energy, change the story and the conscious experience up here?
So remembering the event is not essential.
Yeah, it's not essential, but it happens sometimes.
It
And it feels nice,
happens.
and you kind of want to. You're kind of curious. You kind of want to know, right?
Yeah, it happens, and it happens often with emotion. So when your body is frozen in that traumatic event, your emotions are also frozen. You were very scared. You wanted to cry, or you wanted to hit somebody, anger. Yeah, that emotion is already in this frozen state. So when the body start releasing, it's like a frozen chicken in a corner of your freezer for 20 years. And then you start defrosting. Yeah. But let's defrost in a room temperature, not in a microwave. Yeah. So which means don't give too much stimulation to nervous system all at once. So don't overdo TRE. Don't shake too long. Yeah. I need to say it just for the listener. If they do it by themselves, it's very important to regulate this experience bit by bit. So that what I use this analogy of putting a frozen chicken in room temperature means allow that melting naturally, slowly.
Yeah.
Right? And then when body starts shaking and start releasing the energy, it's defrosting start happening. Then the emotions start emerging together. Sometimes, not always. Then sometimes memory comes up. So the neocortex, limbic system, and brainstem, 3 layers connected all together, and then it's integrated. So integration meaning that you don't forget the event, you will remember the event, but you don't get activated by that memory. Your body is calm, your emotion is calm, but you remember the event by itself. That means in the computer system, it's already filed as an archive. You put the specific dates or some kind of information to search, it pops up. Otherwise, it's there quiet. Yeah. Unintegrated event it's on the desktop. Doesn't matter what keyword you put in, it keep popping up. Yeah. That is like not filed according to the archive. This event is specifically for this date with these people in this location. Right?
Yeah.
If it's not integrated, it's there,
Yeah.
like red t-shirt man.
It makes no sense. It doesn't.
It could
yeah.
be any red t-shirt man in the last 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Then boom. So now this moment you see red t-shirt man, it's already activating, your body start reacting. This is not integrated.
It's just like your body, your brain can't make sense of it, so it's like all stressed out because we're like these meaning-seeking creatures. Even if we don't need to understand the meaning, somehow we want to understand the meaning. And when we have something and we don't know what it means, it bothers us, and we can't like relax until we complete it and put it into the larger story. So when you figure out, oh, red t-shirt man, oh, that was that guy I was talking to there because of this and because of that, and like, oh, okay, it's no big deal, and you can sort of, it makes sense within the larger story or something like that.
Yeah. So story specific narratives and body reactions are separated.
Oh.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Narratives are past. It's finished.
Yeah.
There is no connection to activate your nervous system this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That is archive. Okay?
Yeah.
If you think about your grandmother's birthday, only thing you remember is, my grandmother was 80 and we had a barbecue and it was fun. But there is no activation in your body, right?
Yeah. It's just like for example, the other day when I was doing that and my legs were running, you kind of let it run, but your brain starts thinking, what's going on here? And you start to have these memories of things you don't think about, like running away from dogs, or this bully at school who was kind of like you wanted to run away from, but you couldn't, or all these different things were coming up. And you're like, oh.
It could be any of those.
But it doesn't feel like a big deal anymore. You're kind of like, oh, that's cute. That's nice. Like you just kind of let it go. It's almost like it lets you let it go because
exactly
you started like you've released it and stuff. Yeah. So if the story follows the state, ideas of good and bad and ethics and rules and social norms and social taboos in society. Every society has different kind of norms of this is how you should be and taboos of don't do this. Does that culture's overall trauma history or physiological experiences affect the creation or the changing of these norms and these taboos? Do you think like one culture is open to say, I don't know, you can burp or you can't burp, or you in Japan you have to bow, or you have to I don't know, address people in this way or that way, and like you can't cry or you can cry. There's all these different like norms of how we should live our lives on big ways and small ways. And this is a hard question, and it's not like your specialty exactly, but I'm curious if you have any ideas on how the body and the bodily experience and the trauma stored in there changes our view of what is good and what is bad and what is normal and what is weird and all of that.
I think the history is hugely influenced that, our norms and belief system, even though it is re-traumatizing ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? Which is very unfortunate. I notice in Japan and in other countries many times this kind of thing. And I can only liberate myself from that belief system, right? And doesn't mean you become completely like ridiculous in public and then do whatever you want. It's not like that, but knowing what is true for you.
Yeah.
And you have your private moment, follow that truth in your body. If you want to burp, if you want to fart. If you want to scream and swear, do it in a place that doesn't hurt other people, right?
Yeah.
And that is the truth of that moment, right? A lot of old men, they are shaking their legs in the train. We call it bimbo yusuri. It's like a poor man shaking, right? But I see it's very not polite in Japan.
Yeah.
Right? So the children are agitating on the chair. They think, stop it.
Yeah.
Sit still, right? But for me, when I say that, this man has a lot of adrenaline and then cortisol in the body, that's why the legs start shaking and they don't even aware of that. Right?
Yeah.
If you notice that and then doing it in the public or do it in a meeting and offend people, notice that you're stressed and do something about it. You release that energy in somewhere else in another moment, right? Like people are shaking on the stage. I always tell them that, okay, shake before you go into the stage.
Yeah.
Then your body already discharged, you're ready to sing or ready to perform. Right? So if you know your body, if you understand your nervous system, what's going on, you can regulate it in a healthy way, not oppressing it.
That's all for now, folks. Let's take a little break-a-roo and continue this conversation next time, which I gotta warn you is gonna be a big doozy, a doozaroo. You don't want to miss that one. We get even more into Japanese culture, trauma, and stress and tension release. In the meantime, if you want to connect with Sae or learn more about TRE, you can visit her website, www.saekani.com.